Good morning, everyone. We've got a fun interview today. I've got Brent back on again, and we're going to connect the sacred mushroom to religion, or at least I'm going to let him do it. Brent was just a YouTube follower, and he left a comment, and I asked him if he wanted to come on the channel, and now we're pretty friendly. It's that simple. If you guys want to come on and you have some interesting info, leave a comment, and I will surely reply. So let me bring him on. What's up, Sarah?
Hi, how you doing, Micah? Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, no problem, man. I was really excited. We were talking behind the scenes. We were texting for a little while, and I sent you the yarmulke, right, that the Pope and that the Jews wear.
Yeah.
And I was like, can we connect that to the mushroom top? And you were like, absolutely. And I'm just excited to see this.
Absolutely.
I'd be excited to see, too. It's interesting, too, because the Pope wears the red one, and the Jews wear the black, and that's the colors of the playing deck of the cards. And the playing deck of the cards is 52 cards for 52 weeks. It's 13. There's basically 4 sets for the seasons, and it breaks it down like that. Each season or each week gets a different card. So let's go. Oh, you're gonna have to represent it. I don't know where it just went.
Let's. Okay, let me know if you can see.
Yeah, I got it now. Well, actually, hold on a minute. Now you're just okay. Now you are okay. All right. So, do you want to preface this a little bit before I bring on your presentation? Do you want to just jump right into the presentation?
Sure. Yeah, we can preface it a little bit. It is, like you had mentioned, connecting ancient civilizations through the consumption rather of mushrooms, and how the consumption of mushrooms essentially sped up a human civilization, their ability to speak, period, and communicate. So we'll jump right into it. I think it's better.
Because when we're talking about, first of all, that thing that you're sharing right now is just our screen. It's not your presentation.
Okay.
You have to fix that, number one. Number two, okay, there we go. The other thing, too, is that when you're talking about the mushroom and speeding it up, the way that people like Terrence McKenna or things in general would talk about this, it basically like we acted like apes, and then we started finding hallucinogenic mushrooms, and it evolved our ability to speak, to share. Is the idea of speaking? So here's the interesting thing: is the idea of speaking and communicating something from a higher dimension that we pull down, because we know that when you pass on, right, everything is done telepathically. So can it both at the same time be a higher dimensional way of communication, and at the same time, do you get what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, actually, from my studies, I'm going to say yes, because I believe we can download consciousness different way. Just like we can't see the Wi-Fi, yet it's all around us. We cannot see the 4G or 5G wavelengths, the infrared, but it's all around us. So if you can channel or get into the right frequency or wavelength, you can download information. And here we have the humans consuming mushrooms and receiving an alchemical transformation within the brain that allows them to see and view things differently and have different perceptions and different outlooks. So that can stem from the ancient fungi that's DNA within it, consuming it, and then having that reaction inside the brain that allows for different types of thoughts and different perceptions. So I think that is what he talks about in.
Can we connect the expansion of certain brain parts, the expansion of them or the growth of them, to the mushroom?
The only topic that I touch on here a little bit is in the pineal gland, but not so much correlating it to the expansion of consciousness,
Mhm.
Just more so the headgear or the headwear, the arapis that was
Mhm.
worn by the pharaohs, and kind of what that signifies.
Mhm.
And I speak a little bit about the Ophites or the Ophites that worship the serpent for
Mhm.
its allowing individualism. So
Mhm.
I'm going again, like, since there is a lot to expound upon, the chemical reactions inside the brain more than likely are going to inhibit growth because of receiving those different wavelengths or those different frequencies and those chemical reactions inside the
Mhm.
brain. So it could, I have to go and look at it,
Mhm.
do more research into the brain and its growth pertaining to the consumption. But
Okay.
I'm gonna say that it had a lot to do with the evolution of the brain and where we're at now,
Uh-huh.
excluding any ancient societies like Atlantis that are, still up for dispute.
It's interesting. The funny thing about Atlantis, check this out. If you go to Google Maps, right, um, and you check the area, it's about 600 miles off of, is it Spain? I forget. But you've seen this before where you saw there was just like a bunch of imprints for streets under the water.
Sure.
That has been removed, and that has been replaced with just a blank slate of water. They've
Mm.
completely removed that, which is exactly where Plato described Atlantis to be. So
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting.
it is. And the same thing here on our side of the world in the Caribbean. There's also what look to be stones that were put that are underneath the ocean
Mm-hmm.
there as well. And there's also to the east of, excuse me, to the west of Algeria, which we'll talk about later. There is also the reshot structure, which it looks like Atlantis as well,
Mm-hmm.
where it's the eye in a circle, and it looks like it had water moats around it as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting if that really had anything to do with Atlantis, because it's next to the cave paintings that we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about in
And then you
our.
hear about people talking about how the Eye of the Sahara is the middle of Atlantis and things
There
of
you
that
go,
nature.
the reshot structure. Yeah, the eye
Yeah.
of it. Mhm.
Um, one last question before we get into your presentation, talking about speaking and people first at the very beginning,
Mhm.
learning how to speak together.
Mhm.
I think the first person that heard a parrot talk was fucked up for weeks.
It blew their brain that this person or this bird could talk just like it, and then teaching it that. I wonder, after teaching it, that's what it had to happen. We learned how to speak and communicate, and whenever we domesticated it or it was around us, it hurt us, and it was probably blown
Yeah.
their mind when you think about it like that.
All right.
Absolutely.
So let's get right into it.
I'm gonna reshare
You
my
have to
screen.
switch back to the presentation though.
Here we
Here's
go.
the thing: while you're on the presentation screen, you're
Yeah.
not going to be able to see me. You're just
Okay.
looking at your presentation right now.
Mhm.
So I have added it now. Cradle of Civilization. This is what we see. So let's get started.
All right. Sounds fantastic. Thank you, Micah. So here we're going to be reviewing ancient civilizations' consumption of mushroom. But first, let's design it. The psilocybin mushroom, any of several species of hallucinogenic fungi found across a number of genres, especially psilocybin mexicana and P. cubensis, often called magic mushrooms. Psilocybin mushrooms produce two primary psychoactive compounds, psilocybin and psilocin, which are responsible for their mind-altering effects. The effects of psilocybin are highly subjective depending on the type of mushroom, how it's prepared, the dose used in session, and what is known as the set and setting. As the compounds take effect, a range of distorted and heightened sensory impressions begin to occur. Users may see vivid colors and auras around objects and people, witness objects morphing into other forms, and perceive sounds as more complex and profound. Madame Blavatsky, in her work The Secret Doctrine, discusses an illustration of Adam from the Sefer Dinutza, the most ancient Hebrew document of occult learning in which the divine essence is emanating from him. Like a luminous arc proceeding to form a circle and then having attained the highest point of circumference, the ineffable glory bends back again and returns to earth, bringing a higher type of humanity in its text. I included that piece in this presentation because I'm probably about an hour into The Secret Doctrine, and as I'm doing my work, and this work wasn't really dedicated to mushrooms, it was just something I was doing on the side. But when I read that verse describing the first man to have this aura, if you will, it reminds me of what a person who's consuming a mushroom and then looking at humans, at the early man, and having more of a spiritual awareness and seeing that golden wedding garment, as Manly P. Hall called it, the magnetism that we have in our body from the metals.
Manly P. Hall got that from Walter Russell, by the way.
I'm going to go back, and I heard you speak about Walter Russell in another video, so I've put that on my to-do list to get in there.
Okay, perfect. Two things. Number one, when you're talking about consuming mushrooms, guys, you have the stems and you have the cap, right? What you would do is you would take just a couple caps, like 2 or 3 caps. If you're a pro, you'll take maybe 4 or 5. If you want to see God, you'll take more. But when you microdose them to, let's say, treat depression, anxiety, PTSD, things of that nature, a cap is usually a gram. But when you microdose, you take anywhere from 0.1 gram to 0.4 grams, and you'll adjust it as needed. My question about the psilocybin mushroom is, you'll hear a lot of people when they're like 13, 14 and they discover this, that they find out that it grew on cow shit. I am of the, and then you hear things of holy cow, things of that nature, cow being the female bull Taurus. I'm wondering if there's a connection to why in India they worship the cow because of that.
There's a fungus, actually, Terence McKenna speaks about it in Food of the Gods, and there's a specific type of mushroom that grew from the cow dung. And so we can get into it. I'll go into the next slide. We'll talk a little bit more.
Sure. Just take a
but yeah, the cow dung had a specific type of mushroom that would grow from it, and the Hindus would consume that, or the Indians would consume that. So that even glorified even more the sacred cattle that was planting, allowing to till the earth. So there's a lot, and we'll get into that here.
Guys, that's where you get the phrase holy cow from, by the way.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Here we have the mushroom shaman, and this is in Algeria and Tassili, Niger. The world's oldest known petroglyph depicting the use of hallucinogenic mushrooms exists in the cave rock carvings at Tassili, Niger, Algeria, which depicted the mushroom shaman which depicted on the mushroom shaman are psilocybin mushrooms.
Now, you don't have it here, but I'm wondering, have they carbon dated that?
I don't, and it's hard for me to have full faith in carbon dating for stone and for rocks. So maybe there's some other here. They have the round head period to 8,000 to 6,000 BC. But if you could talk to me a little bit about what you found, and if you have any.
Well, I mean, in the Lascaux caves, for example, we go back 17,000 years, because it's not just I could understand if it was just a carving into a rock, but if there's like oils and things that like color the thing, like here, the mushroom top right here looks like it has, those you should be able to pick a sample up and carbon date.
Absolutely. I'd be interested to do a little bit more information on that, into the carbon dating. But here also in that same area, geographical area, you see here now our ancient ancestors with spots, with dots on their body, with a white skull cap as a mushroom cap. You can have here a ram or a goat. And I didn't include it in here, but I wanted you to talk a little bit more about Baphomet as we get into this, because Ba was the Sumerian word, or the Egyptian word. Ba was the Egyptian word for ram. So it makes sense now for the as above, so below, and then the goat and Aries being the first sign. But I guess we can get that a little bit later. But here we have humans wearing skull caps. And if you ask me, this is a representation of the mushroom. Yes, it's the round head. They call it the round head period just because people were depicted with having round heads. But they're wearing skull caps or bonnets, and it resembles a mushroom cap, the yarmulke.
This almost reminds me of the elongated skulls with the caps that they used to wear over them.
Yeah, similar to that, we'll get into Osiris in just a moment. So we'll scoot on over to the rock art in the Kola region of eastern Tanzania and Bradshaw rock art in Australia. And the use of psychedelic mushrooms by ancient man is preserved in the rock art here in Australia. And our ancestors were shaman who experienced the mysteries of the universe through the consumption of mushrooms and other plant life. Through altered states of consciousness deriving from the alchemical transformation occurring within the brain, ancient man, ancient shaman, ancient shepherd kings were the first to disseminate this higher consciousness with the rest of humanity. In Food of the Gods, Terence McKenna further explores the degradation of the ego through psilocybin consumption, noting that mushrooms help remove boundaries between sexes and allowed for a more spiritual, feminine relationship between the community. The dominator-style cultures that arose after mushrooms had been kept in the general population caused man to sever the connection it had with Mother Earth and her knowledge of magical ointments. Dominator cultures would continue to dominate through sex, like those of the Saturnalia-style cult depicted in Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut.
But he was actually killed because of it, because he came out with it, because they would show you these Rothschild balls with the masks that they were doing and all these sacrifices. He showed all that, and he was killed shortly thereafter. I also trace my personal thoughts on this is the Egyptians venerated the women, right? They venerated the woman. All the statues you see, it's a man with a woman holding him. Like, it's the woman that's protected. Mm-hmm. And it's the divine feminine. It's the creative aspect. That's how they were able to build things that they could. When you get around to the Old Testament and the Jews, they make that a very, very patriarchal system, and that changed the course of history.
Yes.
For the worst, incidentally, by the way.
Yes.
But yes, please continue.
No, and it's true. Very valid point, because that's what, in discussing this, the dominator style cultures, the patriarchy did remove a lot of the feminine, the divine feminine that we had, and removing the plants from our daily life in terms of using it for medical treatments, for ointments, the mushrooms, compounds. They took that information and kept it secret, and only the elite would have that information.
And what they don't know too is that God in the Old Testament had a wife, and her name was Asherah. Asherah, that was her name. And they removed her completely from the Bible because she used to help make decisions and things of that nature. They had her completely scrapped. Mm-hmm. Then you get to Adam and Eve. Mm-hmm. And they tell you that Adam and Eve were created. They simultaneously tell you that Adam and Eve were created together. And then they simultaneously tell you that Adam was created and then Eve from his rib. So they contradict themselves in the Bible to begin with. But what they don't tell you, because it's been removed from the Bible too, is Adam had an initial wife named Lilith. And Lilith, her biggest reason, the reason she was kicked out before she became the queen of demons and things of that nature, she was kicked out of the Garden of Eden because she wouldn't submit missionary position. She wouldn't lay under Adam.
I saw some of, as I was doing my research, I saw in the Sumerian, you don't really show it, but they show the sexual positions, the domination. It's all in some of the remnant. I'm sorry, hold on here. I was going to pull it up, but they show it in some of the figures, the rock, not the rock art, but the carvings show that a lot of that dominator style culture being displayed there, and bringing back into the point was Terence McKenna was really expounding upon the removal of those drugs, but also talks about how alcohol is just so pervasive, and it's legal, but it's been the most destructive drug, if you will, in humanity. And cannabis seems to have the most law-abiding citizens of any of the recreational drug users in the community. And he also talks. I know I've heard alcohol.
If you consider cannabis a drug, you have to remember this plant cures thousands of things. You know, it's medicine. It'll help with glaucoma. It'll help give hunger back to cancer patients who are losing a lot of weight. I mean, there's just endless supplies. The THC. It calms you down. Even the CBD. I don't consider it a drug, to be honest with you. It's literally a plant. It's from God. And yeah, so go continue.
I agree. And that's one of the things that I want to advocate here very professionally is the use of, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but subjectively, the use of plant medicine can help with your anxiety, with your stress levels, with seeing a broader horizon, with getting out of depression and creating new thoughts and a new way of thinking. And
alcohol is literally the worst.
It is the worst. And our ancients, when they were distilling alcohol, they'd see the vapor and they called it a spirit. And that's where the demons come from. They talk about the alcohol.
Well, that's the word. Alcohol is an Arabic word, which means mind-eating spirit. It lowers your vibration. I tell the people all the time, when you're inebriated, you want three things. It brings you to your reptilian midbrain, and you turn into an animal, literally, because you want food, sex, and sleep. That's all you care about when you're drunk. That's it. You're not going to read a book. You're not going to do a podcast. You need those three things. And that's basically it. What I tell people to do if they're having depression or they're having anxiety or PTSD, I say, try buying theanine, 5-HTP, that's tryptophan, the same thing that's in Turkey. You could buy St. John's wort. You could buy some omegas and some B12s. Take all of those. If that doesn't work, try cannabis. If cannabis doesn't work, they make ketamine nasal sprays now that they've just approved. Try that. If that doesn't work, try microdosing psilocybin.
Yes.
One of those things has to work before you guys start taking pills for this stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And also, don't forget to educate yourself in life in whatever it is that you're lacking. If you need financial help, go read books about finances. And if you're going to use a recreational drug, it also helps when you are also consuming information to help you with the opportunities you have in your lifestyle. Maybe you're not a good communicator with your partner or your spouse. You got to also educate yourself. And just because you graduated college doesn't mean that you got to stop learning.
Right.
Or you didn't graduate college. You should be constantly learning. So that's one thing I'll advocate along with the usage. Okay. And so this is our ancient ancestors. You know, we will go into Genesis now. And Genesis, the gene. So I'll break down the term gene has its origin in the field of genetics and is derived from the Greek word genos, which means birth or origin or race. Genesis, the word Genesis has its roots in ancient Greek. It's derived from the word genesis, which comes from origin, source, or birth. This term is related to the verb gignomi, meaning to be born or to come into being. Generation, the word generation comes from Latin. The word generatio, which is derived from the verb genere, or generare, meaning to beget, to generate. This in turn traces its roots back to the Latin word or noun genus, meaning race, stock, or family. So we'll skip the last sentence, but let's jump into it. So the second word in Genesis is two words. It's gene and Isis. So Isis, the name itself, is believed to be from the Greek rendering of the Egyptian name Auset or Iset. And she is known as the divine mourner. So good morning, right? The Greek form Isis was later adopted into the Latin language in the context of ancient Egyptian mythology. Isis was considered a powerful and benevolent deity associated with motherhood, magic, and wisdom. In here, again, I mean, it's hard to not see it. You have the cow horns, you have the sun, the solar disk, and then you have the sign of Taurus. I think what's Taurus ruled by Venus or something like that?
Taurus and Libra are both ruled by Venus, correct?
Now, also here you see
and Venus is the divine feminine.
There you go, the divine feminine. Interesting enough.
This also shows you, because this is Egyptian. They're showing you the sign of Taurus. This is known as the glyph, guys. The thing that's in black. It's called the glyph. These are little shorthand symbols that they show you for this. For example, Virgo is an M, which is why you have Mary, Mare, Isis, Mary. Isis actually was called Isis Mary. And then there's a Jesus fish attached to it. They show you this, but the reason they're showing you the Taurus glyph here is because they're also showing you that they worship the sun in the age of Taurus.
Yeah, I threw that on there because I figured, like, I took this image and I was like, Micah's gonna love it. Put it in there. But the cow horns here also symbolically, cow horns don't stop growing. So it's also for the brain and the knowledge and the wisdom that won't stop growing. So Genesis, the gene of Isis, or the generation of Isis, who ruled with her brother and husband Osiris, who were the first of 9 children fathered by Ra. I believe Osiris was born first. Isis is depicted with a crown representing the sun positioned in between 2 crown horns, the symbol of Taurus. Now, I don't want to go too far back, but you did mention about creation and Adam being first and then Eve. From kind of my readings of what I'm getting from the secret doctrine, I almost feel like if we were just one androgynous being first,
we were
the woman,
then
gave birth to the man.
What people don't understand that they're starting to figure out right now, because especially with the gender communities and all their stuff, is they're trying to figure out a way to do this. In the woman's bone marrow, she actually has sperm cells, and that used to impregnate herself. They were androgynous long time ago. The male is actually a deviation from that. In fact, if you look at the XY chromosomes of the male versus the female is the 2 X's. The male is the X and the Y, but the Y chromosome, it's shrinking, it's disappearing.
Yes. The Y chromosome is actually okay. So the women are base it's acid. The women's DNA is acid and the males is the base. So that X, that's why boys are more autistic, the more susceptible to autism, because of the Y chromosome. It's not complete. It's not the X, or it's not as strong. So the acid base, and I got to thank my wife for that one, because she's a pharmacist, and when I was talking to her about this, she was mentioning to me that that's why now, because I'm sharing her the information, and she said, okay, that makes sense now. That's why the X is acidic and the B is the Y is the base, and it's not stable, it's not good. So that's why it can be affected. But interesting enough. Now here, Osiris, the Greek translation of the Egyptian name Ausur, and is the god of life, death, and fertility. He was the first pharaoh of Egypt and was known as a merciful judge of the dead and the afterlife, and the agent of life on earth, including sprouting vegetation. He is depicted green for his relation to the vegetation and black for the rich soil of the Nile Delta. Osiris's name means throne of the eye.
It's interesting too because he was called Ausur, right? Well, what is the story of Osiris, right? He dies and he gets resurrected, right? He's brought back to life. Well, if you look in the Bible, they changed the name Ausur. Well, it would be El Ausur, because El was the god back then. El was Saturn, El was the god. So it's El Ausur. Isn't that interesting? That it sounds a lot, and it comes a lot. The story is basically a mirror image of Lazarus.
Yes.
Versus El Ausur. That's where it comes from.
And interesting enough, you have him, Osiris depicted, always, wrapped up in a mummy, for death. But the part that was not found when he was reassembled the first time, they gave birth. They had Osiris and Isis had Horus, but then Seth ripped them apart again, and he couldn't find his penis. The penis is like the mushroom. It's the phallic symbol of ancient Sumeria. We'll go into John Allegro in a little bit, but he is wearing here a tef crown with ostrich feathers. But on all the research that I did, nobody speaks about this white piece. They just say it's the upper crown of Egypt. But the mushrooms, the psilocybin mushrooms, the ancient Egyptians grew it on barley. So if you look at the tip of the mushroom here, you see my cursor on the mouse. That is what this is symbolizing here on his head, is the mushroom. And also the missing piece is the phallus. It's all symbolic of the penis. And so that's how I'm tying the mushrooms into ancient Egypt. The cap, the enlightenment, him being green, thinking not for an alien, but just because of his relation to vegetation. And here is the vegetation. Here is the food that allows you to speak to God. And
guys, go back a sec. Sure. Look at Osiris's head dressing. Look at the shape of his head. Look at the shape of his head, guys. Look how much larger the brain is than our everyday who we are now. You'll see this splattered all across different civilizations. This elongated skull that they try and hide from you, that they try and get rid of, that they've been destroying since day one.
100%. The Eye of Horus and the Eye of Ra. Now, I don't want to be pretentious and say that I knew about both, but traditionally, I grew up only knowing about the Eye of Horus. So here, the Eye of Ra is the sun, and the Eye of Horus is the moon. When speaking about the pineal gland, Rene Descartes called it the fundamental seat of the soul. This notion derives from the pineal gland being the only single part of the brain, therefore it must be the central point of perception and dissemination of information.
And what do they say in the Bible? If thine eye be single, full of light.
Tell me. Let's go.
Right.
Now, here also our ancient ancestors believed that before we had eyes to see, we had the pineal gland to perceive light and dark, and that was responsible.
Well, the pineal gland is actually wired to the visual cortex in your brain.
Part of the endocrine system as well, wired to your visual cortex. And it makes sense here that the pineal gland in all its phallic glory is responsible for the secretion of melatonin governing our circadian rhythm. And I bring back
DMT, correct?
DMT. And I bring back the phallic allegory.
I'm pretty sure that melatonin is a precursor to DMT.
For dreaming, right?
Yeah, for dreaming, yeah. Melatonin, guys, for those of you who don't know what it is you can buy them at the supermarket. They're vegetable caps. The problem with it is if you continue to take melatonin, you'll wake up with headaches and it'll throw off your circadian rhythm. But melatonin, basically, if you were to take a melatonin pill in the middle of the day like this, within about an hour or so, you would start to feel sleepy, like if the sun was going down, because that's what monitors our circadian rhythm. The other thing too is the Eye of Horus too, right? Which is the one on the right. That if you take a sagittal cut of the human brain, meaning if I sliced my brain this way and opened it this way and showed you the middle chunk of it, the Eye of Horus is exactly where the pineal gland is. That eyebrow ridge above it is known as the corpus callosum. So they knew about this in Egypt. And we think that modern science really has a thing on them.
Yeah. And reptiles have the most developed pineal gland of all animals. My belief is that aside from it representing the deity, the Wajet, which is symbolized by the cobra, they wore the uraeus around their heads with the cobra position where the pineal gland.
Right. Reptiles have it has a cornea and a lens, the pineal gland in reptiles.
And for many of us, I noticed this early on. You see an alligator or a snake right here represented by both of the eyes of Horus put together. Here's the bridge of the reptile, of the crocodile. Here are the eyes. Here's the nose. But also, I chose to include this because here is the mushroom cap right there and right there or right here. So it's very symbolic. It looks like a crocodile to me, a reptile, but it's also the pineal gland. But it's also, the Eye of Horus, Eye of Ra. But again, it's also the mushroom cap.
Incidentally, guys, Ra was Amen Ra, which is why when you go to church and temple and you say Amen, you're actually, the Jews will tell you it means, and so it shall be. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that at all. When you say Amen, you're actually giving praise to Amen Ra, who is the earlier sun god. Horus is the newer sun god.
Yes. We'll touch over to Mesoamerica here, and Xochiquetzal and Xochipilli. Psilocybin aztecorum is a species of psilocybin mushroom. Xochipilli is the god of art, games, dance, and flowers and song in Aztec mythology. His name contains the Nahuatl words Xochitl or flower, Xochitl or flower, and Pili either prince or child, hence means flower prince. But when I zoom in here, you can see the mushroom represented right here on the arm, on the ears of Mesoamericans and the shaman. And I did a little bit of work on Quetzalcoatl. Maybe we can touch on that later. But Quetzalcoatl also the symbolism there, the serpent and the feather serpent, the cross and the sun. But I want to jump into here Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of it the fruit thereof, and did eat it, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. The mystery of equilibrium, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. The tree of life represents the spiritual point of balance, the secret immortality. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, as its name implies, represents polarity or unbalance, the secret immortality. The allegory of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is a cosmic myth revealing the methods of universal and individual establishment. The Ophites, the serpent worshippers, revered the Edenic snake because it was the cause of individual existence. Though humanity is still wandering in a world of good and evil, it will ultimately attain completion and eat the fruit of the tree of life, growing in the midst of the illusionary garden of worldly things. Manly P. Hall. I wanted to include that image. I created that image on AI, but here it's the symbolism of the tree being the mushroom, and having it when ancients would see it grow from the ground and sprout like a penis. I'm telling you, they thought it was the seed of God, like God's son growing from the ground as well. I don't know if you have any comments on that. We can.
No, we can keep going. This is fascinating.
Another curious taboo in force among the ancient Greeks. They were forbidden to eat any bright red food such as lobsters, crab, wild prawn, and strawberries, which also had no name because they were considered poisonous. The Hebrew word siege, meaning, no, I'm sorry, not siege, it's S-Y-E-G, autocorrect, sorry about that. S-Y-E-G, meaning a hedge, explains both these taboos. To protect the biblical ban, for example, buying or selling on the holy Sabbath, the Jews of Jesus' day put a protective hedge around the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy, by forbidding anyone to carry coins on his person from Friday until Saturday evening. And the truth is that mushrooms had once been regarded as holy and reserved for priests, kings, and other privileged people. Therefore, to prevent the unprivileged from eating a sacred mushroom, the general siege was put on, or the general seg was put on mushroom eating and reinforced by treating all mushrooms as poisonous. And that's from Robert Gray.
When you discover something earth-shattering, the government or whoever tries to control it.
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
Yeah, it's true. Now, here we have the outpouring, the law, right? That's what the water.
Mm-hmm.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him. Without him has not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the water was the light of men, and light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth not. Here again, the aura or the mushroom, the enlightenment, the water, the law, Torah, mushroom symbology. This is the enlightenment in the sun, the S-O-N, the S-U-N, and the penis mushroom. Now, ancient man's idea about God were simplistic and related to the world around him. The etymology of the chief god's name supports a common theme, that of life-giving fecundity. And we're talking about spermatozoa. Thus, the principal gods of the Greeks and Hebrews, Zeus and Yahweh, Jehovah, has names derived from the Sumerian meaning juice of fecundity, spermatozoa, and seed of life. Now,
it's interesting that they call it the seed of life, because you always hear them like, this is my seed, or I've traveled 500 miles to give you my seed.
Yeah. What is that? Step Brothers. It comes through.
Or shit like that. But you guys have to understand, it's important to know, although that is funny, the woman's egg is not alive. It's just an egg.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Mm-hmm. It gets released. The sperm is what's alive. The sperm, the man brings life into the egg.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you're talking about the seed of life, it's the man, not the woman.
The phrase is composed of two syllables. I-A, Yah for Yahweh, dialectically Za, so juice, literally strong water, and you, perhaps the most important phenome in the whole Near Eastern religion. It is found in the text represented by a number of cuneiform signs, but at the root of them all is the idea of fertility. Thus, one you means to copulate or mount or create another rainstorm as a source of heavenly sperm and other vegetation as the offspring of the god, whilst another you is the name of the storm god himself.
So to explain this to you guys very quickly, I do this in my astrotheology. The reason God is considered a man or a he, and Mother Earth is considered a woman has to do with one thing alone, and it's God's reign. God's reign, God's sacred fluid. In Hebrew, the word is shemen. We get the word semen from it. Go figure. God's sacred fluid comes down onto Mother Earth, impregnating her belly. And that's why food for vegetation, trees, plants grow from her belly. Again, the male bringing the life to the female. Right?
Behind Judaism and Christianity, and indeed near all Eastern fertility region, there lies in this single phenom, you. So when I say, hey, you, Micah, I'm talking about the copulation, the creation, the fertilization of the egg, the life. The early theologians' reasoning could be as follows. Since rain makes the crops grow, it must contain with it the seed of life. In human beings, this is sperm ejected from the penis at orgasm. Therefore, it followed that rain is simply heavenly semen, the all-powerful creator of God. I found the original article from the New York Times from 1970 from Jesus Christ as a crimson spotted fungi. Here, I didn't go into Santa Claus. Maybe you can touch base on the history of
that one that you have your cursor over right there, the red one. That's not a hallucinogen, is it?
I took a psilocybin. I think this is the amanita muscaria. The psilocybin mushroom. The amanita muscaria, according to Terence McKenna's work, when the people were consuming the amanita muscaria, when the researchers were consuming it, they didn't feel the effects as potent as the psilocybin mushroom. So I just searched the psilocybin, the amanita muscaria.
There is a mushroom that grows in the northeast of America, the northwest of America. That looks very similar to that. That's not a hallucinogenic one. So, but that could be one. Sure. Okay.
So here it just talks about how this book was stirring up a lot of controversy regarding the hidden messages in the Bible and Semitic wordplays. So among the etymologies and wordplays adduced are derivations of Boanerges and Peter from Sumerian names for the mushroom, erect head, penis, mighty man holding up the arch of heaven, and Jesus and Messiah from Sumerian words for semen, which saves, and resinue saps. So here again, it's the anointment of the oil. It could be the sperm. It could be sperm mixed with mushrooms onto the body, the anointed. It could be oil mixed with mushrooms that are put over the body, and that's where we get our word crestis from. And so here, the mushroom has always been a thing of mystery. The ancients were puzzled by its manner of growth without seed, the speed which it made its appearance after the rain, and its rapid disappearance. So every aspect of the mushroom's existence was fraught with sexual allusions, and its phallic form the ancients saw as a replica of the fertility god himself. It was the son of God. So here the rainwater impregnates the earth, and the penis grows from the ground that allows you to talk to God. So its drug was a pure form of the god's own spermatozoa than that discoverable in any other form of living matter. So now,
it's the same thing as the manna. That's what manna is.
Manna from heaven. Exactly.
Manna from heaven.
So here, when we talk about the rain and God and the lips and the thunder, the most powerful, the most forceful spurting of this seed is accompanied by the thunder and shrieking wind. This is the voice of God.
In fact, in Hebrew, the word thunder means voices. So they would think that God was actually talking.
What was that? Libra?
I'm sorry?
What did you say? It was Libra or?
No, in Hebrew.
Oh, in Hebrew.
In Hebrew, the word for thunder translates to voices.
Wow, that's amazing. The lips of the penis tip. Okay, I'm sorry. Somewhere above the sky, a mighty penis reaches an orgasm, and that seeks the heaves. Orgasm that seeks the heavens. The lips of the penis tip, the glands open, and the divine seed shoots forth and is born by the wind of the earth. As saliva can be mixed with breath during forceful human speech, so the speaking of the divine penis is accompanied by a power blast of wind, the holy creative spirit bearing the spittle of semen. So here, when we talk about the word was with God and the word was God, this is what they're talking about, is human speech and the spit, the sperm traveling just like cracking of thunder. This spittle of semen is the visible speech of God. It is his son. In the New Testament terms, the word. In the New Testament, in New Testament terms, the word which was with God and was in the beginning with God, through whom all things were made, and without him was nothing, not anything made that was made. In him was life. That's from Sacred Mushroom and the Cross. Mm-hmm. Now, the kippah and the kippah. The dome or covering is the meaning of the term kippah. Is a sign of, a sign of respect or fear of God. Here I immediately, knowing what I know about ancient Sumeria, this is the dome. This is the sin moon. This is the sin god. This is God, the sin god, excuse me.
Sumerian, sin means moon god, and AI means mountain. So Mount Sinai is the mountain of the moon god, because when they were there, right, they saw the moon coming up behind the mountain, and they figured, oh, that's where it came from.
Mm-hmm. The kippah, or small rounded skull caps worn by Jewish men, particularly in Orthodox Jewish communities during prayer, religious ceremonies, and other sacred occasions. The term kippah is Hebrew, and it means dome or covering. The kippah are also known as yarmulkes, a Yiddish term, or yarmulke, Yiddish term derived from the Turkish word yag marluk. Is there a connection between kippah and manna? So the manna, the kippah.
This was the question that I asked you.
Mm-hmm.
This was what I asked you that spawned this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I said, can we connect this? And
here we go. The Polish word yarmulke, which refers to a skull cap or yarmulke worn by Jewish men, has an interesting etymology. It is believed to have been borrowed from the Yiddish language, which in turn borrowed the word from the Turkish language. The Yiddish word for skull cap is yarmulke, and it is thought to have been influenced by the Turkish word yag marluk, which means rainwear or raincoat. Over time, the term yarmulke in Yiddish came to specifically refer to the skull cap worn by Jewish men, and this term was borrowed. So here, the rain cap, the umbrella, the symbology of the umbrella, and it providing shade or protection from the water, from rainwater, and on the skull cap, and then the yarmulke. And before the yarmulke was even worn, we have our ancient ancestors during the Roundhead period wearing the, oh gosh, what would I do with it? Well, it's okay. We're wearing the white caps. So let me go back. I'm losing my, okay, here we go. Now, so we have the zucchero, you have the yarmulke, but here you have ancient Hebrew priests wearing the phallic hats. So these are, when I was doing my research, more so related to penis, the penis style phallus hat here that our ancient Jewish ancestors would wear. And so more relation to the mushroom on the head and the phallus. Now you have a monk wearing a hood. Now they're going to get this type of rainwear, this coat, from eating these mushrooms. Here, the mushroom, you could see the vault, like the uterus, the symbology of the uterus here, the symbology of the penis head. And then inside of the mushroom is the virgin birth, because it'll give birth to itself, another mushroom sprouting here. And then you have, again, the monk's hood. There's a mushroom, I couldn't find it, but there's a mushroom that looks just like a monk's hood. And here you have another Jewish priest wearing a mushroom style cap. And now you have the man on the moon. Now, There's also the symbology of the coyote here on the moon. There's the man on the moon with a smile, and then there's the bunny rabbit on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Sin, the moon god. Sin is a Mesopotamian god of the moon. Sin was the father of the sun god Shamash, and in some myths also the father of Ishtar, Inanna, the goddess of Venus, and together they form a triad of deities. Sin is a member of the special class of Mesopotamian gods called the Anunnaki.
Yeah, it's interesting too because Ishtar is where we get the word Easter from. It's a fertility ritual, guys. The bunnies, the eggs, it's the female eggs. It's where that comes from. Shamash, in Hebrew, you have the menorah. You have one candle in the front, and then you have, depending on the religious, you either have I think it's 6 or 8 candles in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll realize is that you light the candle in the front, and then from that candle, you light all the rest of the candles. That candle in the front is called the shamash.
Interesting.
Or shemesh. Shemesh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, Shemesh. And so Shemesh, how are Shemesh and Hashem related?
Well, that's a good question. I'd have to look into that. I never connected that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Sin, or Nana, was connected to the cattle herds. Sin was originally Suen, representing the full moon, and later transformed into Sin, relating to the crescent moon, not the present moon, but the crescent. Mm-hmm. Sin is depicted wearing a hat symbolizing the moon, or what can be believed to be representing the sacred mushroom that provided insight to the secrets of the universe. And here, the images, you can see the crescent moon represented on his hat, but you also see the moon here, the dome. Mm-hmm. But we all know they're taking mushrooms. They had to have been, because the priest kings had it. They knew of this knowledge. They knew what these mushrooms can do. They don't have TVs. They don't have anything distracting them from nature and from their environment. So they knew very well. But also depicted in this, I wanted to highlight the men are wearing dresses. You know,
I'm looking at the guy that's sitting on the chair all the way on the left with that hat. It reminds me of the Japanese a little bit.
Over here or over here?
All the way on the picture on the left, the guy all the way on the right.
Oh, this one? Or am I? Okay, Japanese. But see here, you see the Jewish.
Yeah.
Remember those hats right there that we talked about? Like they look like a penis, very phallic in
resemblance. Yeah.
So this is the conscious. Our ancient ancestors, the consciousness level was rising with the consumption of the mushrooms. They saw the moon. They understood the moon would was feminine. It was related to the period, the woman's 28-day cycle of the period, the sun telling time. Also, here, Moses by Michelangelo is depicted with horns on his head. But as you alluded to earlier, Moses was the one who went up Mount Sinai and came down with the law. And but he was also associated with the moon. Now, there's also the last one here. I want to develop a little bit more. We can do another part 2 with some other stuff, Micah. But I mean, I'm just fascinated with the researcher. But look at the wizard hats. Look at the phallus hats. The pointed hats of our Sumerian ancestors. This is a lot of symbology of wizardry. And the more and more I studied, the more and more I learned how civilization has turned some of our archaic thinking into very demonic controlling mechanisms. And so what I mean by that is, like, as I was doing my research on this, the Hindus, the star, the 5-pointed star inverted is just magic. It's just, sorcery, denoting sorcery. And when I was studying this, the pentagram, it was actually like learning about it. It was a Hindu symbol, and like the swastika being,
you could talk about it forever. I mean, the pagans, the pagans with 1 point down represented winter, with 2 points down represented summer. The Christians, the pentagram was one of their earliest symbols. It represented the 5 points of infliction on Jesus. Right?
Yep. There's
and there's nothing to fear about it. It also represents Lucifer's pentagram, Lucifer being Venus. Well, if you take Venus and the Earth and rotate it around the sun in 1 year's time, they almost connect at 5 points, and you just connect those 5 points, you get the pentagram. So there's so many uses. You could talk about. We could do a whole episode on the pentagram.
Yeah, the pentagram, and then like helping break down Baphomet for people. Again, like what's really eye-opening, just the BA in Egyptian stood for the ram, and then but it looks like it's a goat on Baphomet, even though Ba is for ram, and there is an ancient Egyptian deity that was the ram's head. So, and it sound like Baphomet. It was like Rajet or something like that. So as I was discovering this, I learned like the as above, so below, the waters in heaven, the penis in the sky. They're trying to formulate that. And then when I was doing my research into the Sumerian language, SAG, Sag, or Sag, meant head. It means head. So when I look at Sagittarius, I see head and Taurus, head, bull. So I'm like putting those together.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of where I was headed to. But yeah, thank you for inviting me back on again. I love doing this research because this is my passion, and I know it's your passion too. I love that I can share this information with you, and you can plug in a lot of your insight into it. That stuff that most people.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, man. I'm glad we linked up. If you want to do a part 2, or I guess it would be part 3, but this was kind of like its own thing, so maybe part 2 to this. Well, I'll give you a little while to do your research on that, and then we'll just link up. You have my number. Just text me. Let me know when you're getting close. Yeah,
I'll text you some ideas and see what you think that you like the most, so we can talk about. That'll help, because if we have a couple minutes, what I am noticing is a lot of my family and friends, or even just the community, being waiting for death, waiting for the end of the world, and waiting.
Is that in a Christian sense?
Yeah, waiting to die. And it's been, the waking up. I grew up in the Catholic Church, and became Christian, and I researched it, and there was another gentleman who kind of woke me up, because I saw the way religions talked about each other, and I said, this isn't right. Like, there's no way like one person is going to hate, like one God is hating another God, and one God hates all these people. And I said, no, this isn't right. So what I'm trying to share is how a group of people took all the history and knowledge of the entire world and put it into a book, and made this powerful book that made you believe that you can be forgiven for you can act like a moron, act like an idiot, and do all kinds of stupid things, but go to church on Sunday and wash away all your sins, and then go back into population and civilization.
Well, it's the perfect excuse, or it's the perfect way for a simple-minded person to live.
Yes.
A religious person.
Thinking. It doesn't allow you. You don't have to think.
What do you have to do in Christianity? You just have to have faith in the resurrection in Christ. That's it. Faith without works. You'll always hear them saying that. Faith without works. How easy is that?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, I have family members. Like, it's just a mechanism that made people weak on purpose, for them to see the state. Now, I know when I think about the state, I think of Carl Jung in The Undiscovered Self, and he just talks about, you have society trying to make everybody to one point, into one central point, the state and everybody that's an outlier, they're ostracized. And I look at that as the church was saying, everybody needs to be right here, and if not, you're a pagan or a heathen. And here we go. The pagan comes from the word pagani. The pagani were the people that lived outside of the gospel, outside of the reachability of the word of God. And then the heathens were also, it's the same concept. I think they were like the Vikings were the heathens, and they were outside of the reach of the word of God and the gospel. So I'm looking at those words, the heathens, the pagans, and it's just that. And I watched another one of your videos with a gentleman who was pagan, I guess, if you wanted to call it that.
Stein. Yeah.
I watched the whole thing, but you had mentioned and talked about how Odin had 2 ravens and was a shepherd. It goes back to the shepherds. It goes back to the priest kings, the shepherds. All that stuff is just farming, archaic perception of the way man viewed life and society. And we've lost our way because everybody's just waiting for somebody to come and control them. And
it's a slow drip poison of dumbing us down.
Yes.
And it's really started to accelerate since the Rockefellers took over the education system.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's no critical thinking anymore.
None. And then it's common sense is not common. People don't want to do the thinking.
And people like us who think critically about things like that are labeled extremists.
And I have to be more conservative in my own family. I don't even want to talk about things that we talk about anymore because we can point out all these things, but as Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool somebody than to convince them to be.
I mean, the good thing about Christians is they have built-in defenses, right? They don't make a lot of sense, but I know all their talking points, you know?
Yeah.
When I talk to them, I know all of them.
It's there. Like, and I'm like, you know, when they talk about being washed in the blood and eating the body and all this stuff and cannibalism.
Well, that's Catholicism. That's not Christianity. But
Catholicism, right? And then Catholicism mean universal.
That's why the Protestants can't stand them.
It's true. And they made it a universal religion, assimilating all the other religions of the conquered people into one. Mm-hmm. So now we have to wake up humanity, and I realized that's what's my passion. And I'm glad we connected because you're somebody I followed for a long time, and I just never had the time, or I always had the time, but just never the bravery, if you will, if that's even a word. The bravery.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
To go out and do it. And now I found a community, somebody that I could talk to openly and freely about this.
So Brent, do me a favor, plug your social medias where everyone can find you. And we'll let you get back going to what you got to do.
Well, I have my Wide Awake channel here. It's just at youtube.com/ it's Wide Awake, WYDE, and then AWAKE. And I don't have an Instagram, but I do have a Twitter. It's also at Wide Awake. So you can follow me.
I think you're going to have to friend me.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get you on Twitter, and then we're going to chat a little bit more. But
right.
We'll share some insights and some more ideas.
I'm real Mr. Dank. If you just look up Micah Dank, someone made a fake profile.
I'll find you. You're a real Micah Dank? All right.
Real Micah Dank.
I'll know
real Mr. Dank. Real Mr. Dank.
Real Mr.
Because somebody made a profile of Micah Dank and tried to spoof me, which I think is hysterical. But
imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, right? That's what they say. So I'll follow you, and then we'll get together for some more videos and but we will wake up as many folks as we can.
We will, man. You're a very meticulous and thorough person, and I appreciate the knowledge that you bring. So yeah, let's do something a little different. Maybe we could touch on a little bit more of the mushroom.
Yeah.
Just give me your thought real quick as the last question. Give me your thought real quick on why the mushroom head or the yarmulke on the Catholics are red or pink, and why it's black in Judaism. I mean, black in Judaism goes back to Saturn, and Saturn's a planet. You know that. But why red?
You beat me to it. Red, I'm just going to go with Mars because of Rome and Aries and the god of war and blood also. So blood, war, black for Saturn. I didn't touch base on the cube too. I mean, the chevron symbol is a cube.
Right. And we have the Nintendo GameCube. You have the Sega Saturn. Those are black cubes.
You know, we should do a show on symbolism too, because as the Jack in the Box logo is now a lozenge, which is the female genitalia. It's a cube. Denny's logo is also a lozenge.
You want to do a symbolism one? Let's do that.
Let's do that because I'm huge onto that. Before language and word, it was symbolism. So
just pull up all these corporate companies logos and everything. We'll go through them. All right.
Do it.
Brett, man, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to upload this right away as soon as it actually posts because it's got to go through the checks. I will send you a link.
Sounds great, Micah. Thank you. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Appreciate you.
Too.